Hi, so my name is Bianca Hughes. I'm an associate professional counselor at the Jewels and Stones Counseling Center in Roswell, Georgia. So today, I really just want to talk to you guys about a topic that's very dear to my heart, also very dear to the hearts of loads of other people, especially women of color, in particular Black women. So this started yesterday. I attended an event hosted by Jobbing with Jazz. Jasmine is a career consultant, and she helps women, in particular women of color, help them with their careers, whether it's finding a new job, finding a new resume, doing up their resume or something like that. But the most important factor is that she's really passionate about helping people reach that next level, helping people understand who they are, their worth in the actual workplace. So yesterday we had what we called a sister siesta, and there was about 8 to 9 women, 8 to 10 women probably, just there talking about their different experiences in the workplace, and being labeled a Black woman or being taken advantage of, or in that sense, and many people trying to just say inappropriate comments to Black women, and then the stresses that they experience not only at work but also in their personal life. So one of the couple of things I really wanted to look at is it angry Black woman or is it a hurt Black woman? So when I think about the reason why I wanted to talk about that, just from a therapeutic standpoint, first of all, anyone who is a therapist, if you're not a therapist, we always know that anger is a secondary emotion. So what does that mean? That means angry is not the first thing that we feel, is not what's really going on. There's something going on beneath. So if you think of a iceberg, so at the top of the iceberg you have anger, and then underneath it you have a range of different emotions. Some of these are hurt, some of these are frustration, resentment, fear. So what we do is when we experience this, because those are really vulnerable emotions, we then get angry to protect ourselves, right? Because someone said something that really hurt our feelings. Someone said something that made us feel fearful or put us in a place that maybe before we were put in a position where we had to feel fear or we are powerless, so now it's experiencing again. So that's the first thing I really want to talk about. So everyone's talking about this angry Black woman, whatever she looks like, but we also have to remember underneath that is a human being who is hurt, probably fearful, scared, and resentful of all the other experiences that's going on. So when we're first looking at that label and we're first wondering, okay, is she going to blow up? Is she going to do this? We also have to think, well, what's going on right now? The other point I really want to hone in on, just from a therapeutic point, we really often talk about boundaries. Hi, Erica. Thank you. We really talk about boundaries, right? So just to break it down, to make it simple, boundaries are about protection, okay? And often that's a protection for ourselves, and sometimes it's protection to keep other people out. So if we think of a gate, a fence on a land, we know that that's a boundary. You often have signs. If you go past this, you are trespassing, you will be shot, or you will be reprimanded, or you'll be arrested, right? When we cross that boundary. We can think about our skin. That's a boundary protecting us, right? So that if our flesh is exposed, that we're not being hurt. The other thing is I always think about in the middle of the road. Over here in America, you have the yellow line, the double yellow lines. If you cross that, then you're going to hit an oncoming car. So that's our boundary, our protection. And so what often happens with Black women is that our boundaries are violated. And they're violated in ways that are very open and violated in ways that are very subtle. The biggest one, not a big one, but a very important one I'm going to talk about is my hair, okay? I can't explain the number of people say, can I touch your hair? Or people who've just touched my hair or without even asking. My hair, yes, it's hanging down, but this hair is a part of my body. This is a part of who I am. This is attached to me. And so what I want you guys to know, if someone's asking a Black woman to touch her hair, that's part of who she is. And what often happens is sometimes people will be like, oh, can I touch your hair? And then someone says no. And they're like shocked because this person has said no. And it's almost as if I ask you kindly and I ask you sweetly, that means that you should say yes. And basically people are forgetting that we also have a choice on whether, if you ask a question, there's always going to be the option that the person is going to be yes or no. It's going to be something that you don't actually expect. So when you're asking a black woman to touch her hair, that is part of her body. It's just like asking someone to touch their arm or you're going to touch their breast. It's part of who they are, and they have every reason to say no. But what sometimes happens is people almost expect or think that they have permission to touch it and permission to ask to touch it. And so when they're told no, some people feel offended by that. But it goes back to boundaries. I have every right to say no. I have every right to say whatever I want to say, but can you please respect that? And so for black women, it's almost as if, what do you mean you said no? Like, we don't have a right to say no. And then so you see the look on someone's face, like they're shocked that we say no. So then we go up into defense mode because now you're infringing upon our boundaries and think you have a right to get boundaries. I feel hurt. And if I feel hurt, I'm going to get angry because I don't know what else you want to do. So we have to remember, I am a human being. It's just like with anything, you're just going to ask someone. You just ask permission, but sometimes people feel they already have permission. And so I just really want to reiterate that. And going back to permission, sometimes some of the questions or comments that I say to black women is almost as if people feel they have the permission to ask very inappropriate and personal questions. Almost as if you feel that my life is for you and you can ask any questions, but just simple questions. Or what do you do? What do you do? Let's see. What do you do in your personal time? You know, these, and I'm going to go back to questions at work. What do you do in your personal time? And you'll be like, and I've never met you before in work, and we're just having this discussion, and it just seems, you know, what is your family? What is your background? And it just seems like I almost have this just thing. I could just ask you. But if I was to ask the same thing, I would be looked like infringed upon. So it's just this thing of, for us as black women, people just feel, especially white men, I have the right to ask you whatever I want, and it doesn't really matter. And then if I say it's inappropriate and I set that boundary, then people are often like, I'm not sure what, they're just surprised or thinking what happened here. So, so in that part, I really want to go back to responsibility, okay? So we both have a responsibility. There's my role and there's another person's role. I'm going to give you I don't draw that well, but I just want to give this explanation, this drawing, because this is what came to me. So I want you to think about two people and tug of war. So, and I think it's the same word. I always get confused here with tug of war. And so there's the rope, okay? The two stick people, and there's the rope in between, right? And so if one's, and sometimes we can have a tension here, or it could just be, it could just be really simple, or one person's pulling. So if one person's pulling, right, this other person's coming this way, or vice versa, right? There's no even keel, there's no balance, which tells me we both have a responsibility here to keep an even balance and an even keel, okay? And so when that comes back to, so when you have someone and you have the black woman here, and this, I'm going to use a white male because it often happens there, and he comes over and he's asking questions. He also has a responsibility to respect her boundaries. She also has a responsibility to let her boundaries known that is in a respectful manner, so that we keep this even keel. But when it's imposed upon, so when it is imposed upon, what happens is that one person is overpowering the other person. Right? One person, being this white man, has more power, right? So he's going to have all this rope left, and she doesn't have anything, right? So that power, that's the woman, that's the man. That power is then taken away. That power is then enforced. So what happens with any human being, male, female, white, black, You know, whatever ethnicity, if your power, you'll feel your power is infringed upon, you go into protection mode. And that protection mode is going to be anger, and you're going to fight because you don't know it's going to go back to that flight or flight. So I just want you guys to think that we both have a responsibility. So if you're asking the question, check yourself. Is it appropriate? Am I asking this just to ask, or am I asking this because I really want to know this person? And even if you are asking this question and you are the person being asked, if you tell that person, no, this is my personal life, I don't really want to discuss, and they get frustrated or they get angry, you have to really ask, did you really want to know, or was you just asking for the sake of asking? And so that's one thing. We have to think about permission. Is this appropriate? And if that person says no, they're very much able to say no. They have every single right, but it's almost as if sometimes we don't feel we can, as a black woman, say no, right? Because if I say no, I'm aggressive. I'm a bitch. I'm a bitch. I am mean. I'm tight, right? So not only are we trying to avoid these different labels, we're in a tug of war with ourselves. Like, what do I say? Is the right thing to say? Is this politically correct? Are they going to talk about me? So you're just dealing with all these things, all these different frustrations and all these different questions. And it's like, well, what do I do? And this keeps on happening. Imagine this happens on a daily basis, that people are asking you these inappropriate questions, making gestures, and you're not saying anything. And then that one person says something. What happens? We explode. And people say, well, why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you just... We're not given the space to. We don't feel like we can. Because if we feel like we can, no matter what it's going to do, it's not going to be okay. Something's going to be said about it. And it's almost as if I'm not a human being. I don't have a right to say this as a black woman. And if anyone has ever felt like that, and I think we all have, just think about your childhood. Sometimes when you thought your parents weren't there, or you asked them a question, you were ignored. You were made to feel insignificant. That's what it feels like. Feeling insignificant, that I am not a human being. I don't have a right to have my hair like this. I've got red hair, I've got locks. So a lot of women have afros. It has to be a certain way or a certain look. I don't have a right to do that. And when I do that, because when I do that, I'm questioned. And I'm asked all these questions. Just thinking a bit from a therapeutic standpoint, I, as a therapist, I have to get to know each and every client, each and every person, because every household is different. And then that's another thing. We're not recognized as black women as an individual. Yes, there are some similarities, but we're still different, and each household is different. So when you're interacting with people, just remember every single household is different. Just like you meet your other friends, their household is different. The way they were raised is different. I am from London. There are some similarities. There's also some differences, okay? And so you have to ask questions if you really want to know. But we're a human being, and I think that's the point that a lot of people miss, that we're just human. You know, we're going to get angry, and that's another big thing. Why can't I be angry? Why can I not be frustrated? Why can I not be angry because you violated me? That's another big, just a general thing with therapy, that people feel like if I'm angry, it's not an okay feeling, or it's a negative. I don't believe in that negativity of any emotion. What the negative part is what I do with that emotion. So if I'm angry, I can sit here and be angry very calmly. But if I'm going to take something and throw it at you, that's not okay. But I can feel how I feel if I feel violated or disrespected or made to feel insignificant. So that is really what I wanted to say. And just remember, so anger is a secondary emotion. Under that is hurt and it's pain. And you just have to think black women are hurting because so many things. Imagine so many different ways you're being ignored. You're made to feel insignificant. You're made to feel less than. You're made to feel like you're not a human being. You are on show. Prime example, I was thinking about this. When you go to an art exhibition, right, and you have this all protected, and like, you know, if you go to Paris, you see the Mona Lisa, it's protected. You can't touch that. It's sacred. Well, so am I. and so is my hair and every single part of my body and every single part of my being and who I am. It's sacred. And I would appreciate if you would respect that. And that's all that we're saying. I'm a human. And unfortunately, sometimes some people treat other people, even animals, better than they do us, and that's the truth. Sometimes dogs are treated better than a black woman, and that's the absolute truth. Sad, but it's true. And so I just want you guys to think that from a therapeutic standpoint, that woman is hurting, that woman's a human being, that woman has every right for her boundaries to be respected, and she has a choice to tell you no, and she has a choice not to give you her personal information. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm going to be happy to ask. I see one from Jill. Jill says, so then does this stereotype of the angry black woman make it hard to set boundaries and speak up? Yes, Jill, it really does. You really have to. Could you just think about just having to stop and think, how am I going to deal with this? Do I deal with this? What am I going to say? If I go back and I tell my friends and my family what happened and I didn't say anything, then what are they going to say to me? So not only are you thinking about how to set your boundaries, what to say, if to say it right, then you're going to go back and tell your peers and they'll be like, well, why didn't you say something? And sometimes you're so shocked and you're in so much hurt and pain and confusion, you don't even know what to say in that moment. So yeah, boundaries are hard to set, full stop. But when we set them, it's almost as like, why are you saying this? Like if I was, to say, no, don't touch my hair, which I've said to people, they've looked at me like, but, I've learned to speak up. But I know some people who don't speak up. So I hope that answers your question, Jill. Anyone else have any questions? I'm just going to check real quick if anyone has any questions. If not, I'm just going to go ahead. You can always contact me, email me. My website's, Jill says, boundaries, please. Thank you. Yes, boundaries. So if anyone doesn't have any questions, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to say goodbye. Thank you so much. You can always contact me. My website's www.biancakehughes.com, and you can email me, find my email and contact number there. And just thank you so much for your time.